Human cognition operates across two contradictory states of time. The mechanics of learning require duration. Scanning a page, processing syllables, and drilling concepts through repetition are physical acts that rely on the sequence of seconds. Understanding, however, operates under different rules. Comprehension is not stretched across a timeline. It is a transition from ignorance to clarity that happens all at once. In the 11th century, the Persian philosopher Naser Khosrow addressed this cognitive paradox in his treatise, the Khwan al-Akhwan. Khosrow argued that to reconcile the slow mechanics of learning with the immediacy of knowing, one must reevaluate the physical laws governing the mind. Khosrow begins by defining the parameters of physical matter. In his framework, all physical reality is intrinsically composite, constructed from smaller, divisible parts fused together. He uses the term jism-e-morakab, the composite body. This physical form is subordinate to the laws of time. Khosrow establishes a rule. Every alteration a composite body endures must occur across a temporal axis. Shifting color, changing shape, or receiving sensory input are all processes that consume time. To counter this, he introduces the nafs-e-basit, the simple soul. He defines it strictly by what it lacks. It is uncompounded, devoid of physical parts, and indivisible. Because the simple soul possesses no physical components to rearrange or break down, it cannot experience physical change. Since it cannot change, it exists outside the flow of time. Khosrow relies on a mathematical analogy regarding divisibility to provide a logical proof for these metaphysical claims. In this framework, the physical body behaves like an even number. It is evenly divisible, maintaining its identity without fracturing into decimals. This mirrors the physical world. You can break a composite object down into smaller, distinct parts, cascading outward along a timeline. But no matter how far the division goes, the resulting pieces remain composite. They never arrive at a state of indivisible unity. The simple soul, however, maps to an odd number, which resists clean bisection. Forcing an odd number to divide equally destroys the identity of the whole integer, leaving only broken fractions. Khosrow uses this to illustrate an ontological boundary. The simple soul cannot be divided. It exists only as a unified whole. Because even and odd operate under opposing mathematical laws, the body and the soul maintain mutually exclusive relationships with time. If the soul cannot be split into parts, it cannot be altered. If it cannot be altered, time cannot touch it. These axioms explain the mechanics of information transfer. The bottom timeline tracks the physical jism, while the floating sphere represents the nafs. Transmitting an idea requires two physical intermediaries, the teacher's voice and the student's auditory organs. Because this transfer depends on physical biology, the act of learning is trapped within temporal duration. But once the physical data is processed, it moves off the timeline. The concept is absorbed by the student's simple soul. The temporal delay of learning yields to a frictionless state of knowing. Hey everyone, if you enjoyed this video, hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe. Drop a comment below. I'd love to hear what you think. Your support really means a lot and helps me keep creating content for you all. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Teaching effectively forces timeless knowledge back into the friction of the physical world, building a temporary bridge of time to reach a state of understanding. While Khosrow provides the logic, the poet Jalal al-Din Rumi applies this framework within the Mathnawi. Rumi shifts the focus from mathematical proof to a psychological imperative. He argues that identifying solely with a decaying physical form restricts human potential. Rumi instructs his readers to explicitly align their active consciousness with the timeless, fundamentally uncompounded nature of the mind. In Book 2 of the Mathnawi, he describes the intellect as an entity that must move beyond spatial and physical limitations. For Rumi, the simple soul is the specific mechanism for spiritual liberation. This division between time-bound biology and timeless cognition also appears in Plato's Phaedo. Plato argues that the soul is uniform and indestructible because it lacks the physical parts necessary for decay. René Descartes formalized a similar split with his substance dualism, though he struggled to explain how the mind and physical matter interacted. Immanuel Kant later refined this by defining time as a pure intuition of sensibility. Kant argued that time is not an absolute property of the universe, but a cognitive framework used to process external phenomena. This aligns with Khosrow's axiom: time governs the sensory interface, while the soul remains untouched by temporal decay. Similar structures exist in classical Taoist metaphysics. The concept of Jing represents the time-bound physical essence that inevitably decays. This is contrasted with Shen, spiritual consciousness, which is described as a formless field existing beyond the friction of time. The Zhuangzi describes the sage as someone who anchors their mind within the indivisible, timeless Tao to survive the chaos of change. Across these traditions, the highest state of consciousness requires a transition from the composite to the timeless. Naser Khosrow's text functions as a map for the human condition. Humans are amphibious creatures, surviving across two contradictory planes of reality. We use our composite bodies to navigate physical change and the slow sequence of learning. Yet we possess a simple soul, anchoring us in a domain where truth is instantaneous. Teaching is the act of pulling timeless truth down into the decay of temporal reality. This suggests that learning is not just the acquisition of data, but the soul's ability to extract a permanent understanding from a time-bound world.